Welcome to Callosm, a podcast where science meets art. Callosm is a bundle of fibers that connects the left half of the brain with the right. According to conventional neuroscience, the left half of the brain is more logical and mathematical, and the right half is more artistic and creative. Although modern literature challenges this concept, the reason I named it Callosm is because the theme of this podcast is interdisciplinary thinking. I strongly believe that the future lies in taking a fundamental concept from one field and applying it to another, leading to new ideas that transcend the confines of a single discipline. My name is Dr. Suneet Zadav. I'm an assistant professor in anatomy and a musician who's currently pursuing a PhD in cognitive neuroscience, trying to understand how music affects the brain. While reading the latest research on this topic, I was fascinated by how much we do not know yet. And the podcast is my idea of trying to deliver whatever I read to an audience that is excited to learn more about the human brain and body, but in simpler words, so they feel enabled to live a healthier life. Lastly, being part of an independent music community, I would further love to use this podcast to help indie artists perform their upcoming art, in the hope that it reaches a wider audience. So I'm actually going to start off by a quote that Dr. Andrew Huberman recently posted about, and I'm going to directly read it from my phone. The quote is by Jack Kerouac, who is Kerouac. I hope I'm pronouncing him correctly. It says, "Close your eyes, let your hands and nerve ends drop. Stop breathing for 3 seconds. Listen to the silence inside the illusion of the world, and you will remember the lesson that you forgot." And Andrew Huberman adds, this is on interoception and our ability to control our perceptions, which is all just an abstraction or quote unquote best guess about the physical world we experienced in our past and present, upon which we base our predictions and emotions. And it's amazing when a neuroscientist says something like this, because a lot of interoception comes from the ability of going inside, and a lot of exteroception comes from our surroundings, which is interesting because as we were enjoying an early dinner, Dr. Amit and I exactly spoke about the same thing. So, Dr. Amit, I'd like to hear your 2 words on this beautiful amalgamation of the internal journey and the external journey.
Yeah, you see, most of the yogis, if you see their work, they actually talk of that it is the invisible which rules the visible, and it is the just because you're not able to see the air, it doesn't mean that air doesn't exist.
Right.
And similarly, you cannot even draw what intelligence is like, or what wisdom is like, or what love is like, but we all know and we have experienced what is the feeling of love like, because that means it is a reality. So most of the things that are actually meaningful to us, now you may say we work day in and day out, and we want to have good relationships, we want to have good friends, we want to have good food, but what is it that drives us to have these experiences? It's actually that we want to have joy.
Right.
Because if you see Yogananda in one of his when he used to take classes in the US, and he is a yogi, and he was trained by his master Swami Shri Yukteswar in India, and when he went to US during the time 1920s and up, he stayed there and lived there and did his work till 1952. He used to say that what are the 2 drives which actually drive us in throughout our lives? One is that we don't want pain, nobody likes suffering, and the other is that we want joy, and that is how, because we want happiness, and that is exactly what. If you see your entire life, whatever you are doing is because of basically these 2 things.
I would like to contest 2 things in this conversation.
Huh.
I'm not really disagreeing, but the first thing is pain. There's this beautiful quote that I really relate with, which is pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
Yeah, that is why he didn't say to
Yes.
avoid pain,
Yeah.
but it was actually to avoid suffering.
Right.
And to avoid suffering and to have joy.
Right.
So these are the two, you can say the drives which drive the human.
Right. But I also have a little bit of a skeptical view about the attitude of constantly trying to find joy. I think seeking pleasure or seeking happiness can make you unhappy, while being comfortable with unhappiness can make you happy. It's a very, very weird, paradoxical thing to say, but in modern times especially, it started off with a lot of people on Instagram basically talking about traveling, the hashtag wanderlust thing. And I don't mean to hate on anyone, I don't mean to, argue with anyone, but I would like to respectfully state my opinion that I did a bit of traveling and I realized that I do not enjoy traveling all the time. In fact, after 3 days of traveling, I really miss my work, which is, teaching, playing music for myself instead of playing it at a concert. And I have realized that a lot of our concepts of happiness are actually being driven by algorithms from social media or teachings from people, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we need to also understand that we have the power to create our own definitions of the state in which we want to be. Sometimes I am unhappy, sometimes the job is frustrating, sometimes playing music can be boring and tiresome. But I'm not looking for joy essentially in all of these things. I'm looking for purpose. I'm looking for practice. I'm looking for that kind of a meditation, the kind of meditation that comes from just doing something because you've been doing it for a long time. And if you would not do that, you would not know what else you would be doing. So I tend to follow more towards a philosophy where I'm not constantly expecting joy, neither am I seeking it. I'm not challenging what you're saying at all. I'm just trying to put my perspective in here about the fact that when I was 25, I thought, oh, maybe traveling all the time is a great thing to do. It's a great job. Just travel around and be in nature all the time. And then now, when I realized that I do have the money, not a lot of it, but I do have the money to take that local weekend getaway, by Sunday evening, I can't wait back to be in the classroom. In fact, I often tell my wife that if I were to ever write an autobiography, it would have the title, Sundays I spend missing my desk. So I just wanted to put my thoughts here about the conquest of finding happiness and how would the world be if the conquest was about finding purpose instead of joy. But having said that, you may continue now. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you see, why do we want to have a sense of purpose? Now, we should have a sense of purpose. In fact, I would like to talk about some research by this Nobel laureate, who was Elizabeth Blackburn. And she was doing all her research on telomeres. And since you are an anatomist, you know that telomeres are the chromosomal caps which are the end of which are on the ends of the chromosomes, and they protect the chromosomes from losing the DNA material, just like we have caps on our shoelaces.
Oh, perfect. That's it. I was going to explain it for my non-medical listeners, but you've done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Those little plastic thingies, caps on our shoelaces.
Yes, because if you by constant use their ends become frayed.
Yes.
So nature has given us those caps because when cells they continue to divide, there is always a chance of losing some DNA material. So these telomeres are natural caps, and with a lot of wear and tear, actually, when these caps become weaker and we continue to lose them, it is then that we become susceptible to illnesses, chronic diseases, and we start aging. So she wanted to, in fact, she was one of the colleagues and friends of the other doctor we talked about, Dr. Dean Ornish, who wrote this book called Reversing Heart Disease, where he penned down all his research, how the lifestyle medicine helps in reversing the coronary artery diseases. And later on, he also brought this book called Undo It, which came recently. And he could see that the similar lifestyle medicine and lifestyle principles can work for people, those who are diabetics or hypertensives or have obesity or even mental problems. And these days he's working on Alzheimer's in his work. So what she did actually, Dr. Elizabeth, she found that if we strengthen the telomeres, our longevity will be better And but what are the key factors which give us stronger telomeres are basically the same things: having a plant-based diet, having a good exercise, and a positive stress response. But interestingly, what she found also was that having a sense of purpose also strengthens our telomeres.
Absolutely, right?
So, because if we do not have any purpose, because this is what is evolution all about, if you see, it's not a random thing. I mean, imagine just, are we here just for, having good food and sleep and procreate? But those animals are also doing the same.
Right.
And when we say that, okay, man is the highest creation of God, that means purposely human beings have been created by nature and the creator to do something noble and something higher than what the animal existence is all about. And this cannot happen unless we have a sense of purpose. But then there's another question: why do you think we should have a purpose, and how does it help us? You said, okay, I thought that travel will give me pleasure. It gave you to some extent, but on the whole, you start missing your work, and you have to come back on your desk on Monday morning. But what is the drive behind it? Maybe you enjoy your work. Maybe you are passionate about your work.
Absolutely.
So basically, what is driving you is nothing but the joy of doing the work, which gives you a high.
Exactly. Like being in a classroom,
Yes.
just
And it can be a
speaking and not being interrupted because that might cost them their marks. That kind of thing.
And
No,
it
I'm just
can
kidding.
be different thing for different individuals. Let us say it can be painting for a person who enjoys
absolutely.
painting, because that gives him
Yeah.
joy, or playing a musical instrument because that
Right.
gives him joy.
Right.
So ultimately, if you bring it down to the commonest denominator, it will be just these two things. How can I avoid suffering? Because if you see, travel was giving you some suffering at some point, because it was becoming over for you.
Yeah,
And
it was
you
very expensive, to be honest. At some point.
Yeah, it was draining your pocket, or maybe you
Yeah,
were
it was
becoming.
draining
It was you were becoming, conscious of the finances and the all those things.
right,
But on the other hand,
You can
were,
now use my discount code for an Airbnb. No, I'm just kidding. I wish, but no, Airbnb is not the official sponsor on this podcast yet. We never know. Someday.
So yeah, so that is how, if you see, when we started, okay, what is it that will give us joy? And if you see, joy also has its octaves, just like you have in music.
Music, right,
So
right.
if on the lowest octave, it is actually pleasure. And pleasure is always associated with pain, because everything has a dual nature.
yeah.
So and similarly, if you go from pleasure, you come to happiness.
Right.
And happiness is on a higher octave. But
Right.
even happiness can be conditional or unconditional. Your
Unconditional,
happiness could be limited to what I see around, and if I mix with like-minded people, if they are not around, then I'm not happy.
Right.
Something like that. Similarly, on a further higher note, you have joy,
Joy.
which is actually a little bit of, it is unconditional happiness, slightly going in that direction.
Right.
And on the final octave, you have bliss.
Bliss.
And
Ooh, I like that.
interestingly, if you see, bliss has no opposite of it. And that is why in
Wow.
Sanskrit,
Wow, that's amazing.
and in Sanskrit, you say bliss means anand. So you have dukh associated with sukh, and you have pain and pleasure. You have joy, happiness and sorrow, or you have joy and sadness. However whatever way you put it, but there is no opposite for bliss, and there is no opposite of anand. And that is why one of the ways in which we have defined God is actually Satchidanand, which means God is ever existing, ever conscious, and ever new bliss. This is how our scriptures have quoted God in Bhagavad Gita.
It's so beautiful.
And that is the purpose, the final purpose of all of us, even if we are not knowing about it, but consciously or subconsciously we are moving in that direction, because that is the only drive. We have come from joy, and we are going towards joy, and we are actually seeking joy. And when we get tired of lesser joys, we try to move towards a higher joy. That is how evolution is happening.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm extremely intrigued by the latest neuroscience research and the latest particle physics or quantum physics research pointing towards the existence of a higher power. And I'm not very, very well versed with the literature in particle physics or quantum physics, but I do follow a lot of neuroscientists. I read a lot of neuroscience literature, and it's amazing how people have now started talking about the neuroscience of faith. Like you just got into the conversation, which is beautiful because on a science podcast, it's a breath of fresh air, especially when it comes from a physician who's practicing for 20 years across 3 disciplines. It's a beautiful thing because recently there was a transition in Dr. Huberman's behavior towards faith, and I saw it once again on one of his podcasts, or he was on somebody else's podcast where he started saying that he started praying. Lately he has started praying, and it's really helping him with his mental health. And this is the beauty of it, right? When science, or rather when evidence-based Western medicine and health is now finally trying to combine with Eastern traditional medicine. It could be Indian, it could be Chinese, and maybe it always has been, but maybe I'm at that age right now where I'm being exposed to this other part of the world through conversations with people like you. It's intriguing to me how everything is actually walking hand in hand. You know, these are all different paths to travel towards that same destination. That destination could be joy, it could be compassion, it could be purpose. Define it as you may. It's beautiful how all of these roads, all of these paths, all of these trajectories are converging upon a single point. And it's important that the world sees it that way. You know, I'm a man of science right now because I'm in that stage. I'm young. I'm doing my PhD research work. I read a lot of statistics. So whenever someone tells me about an internal journey, the first immediate knee-jerk response is to be like, I don't think that exists, right? And then to actually, that's a very system 1 initial response, a reactionary response. System 1, system 2 comes from a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. If any of you have read it, it basically speaks about how there's a system 1 that is immediately quick to react, and that's responsible for survival, and system 2 that basically computes and analyzes everything, and takes a rational, non-impulsive decision. Kind of similar to the limbic brain and the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
So my limbic brain tries to immediately argue with you about this. The immediate knee-jerk, like I said, is rejection. And then I have to let it sink in and kind of understand that, I mean, now if we're finally reaching a stage in medical neuroimaging where we can see prefrontal cortex activations in mindfulness and meditational practice, then there seems to be a common ground between religion or God or spirituality and science or research, etc. So my question has actually automatically been answered through this conversation. My question to you was going to be, do you think mythology, faith and spirituality has a place in science?
Yeah, because you see, as you rightly said, we are living in an interesting age where traditional wisdom and science, modern science, is coming on the same page.
Right.
And if you see, one of the greatest scientists was Einstein, and he actually quoted that science without spirituality is lame, and spirituality without science would be blind.
Beautiful.
Which actually, with this way, we understand that how it is not bad to ask questions. What you said, my immediate response is to reject, or immediate response is to doubt,
right,
which is all right, because this is how an intellect works. And so it is good to ask questions. It is good to be skeptical. It is good to test the point which somebody is making, because in this era of self-made gurus and whatever whatnot is happening.
Absolutely. Not myself, by the way. I did not start a podcast to be a self-made guru. As you can see, we're having a rational discussion on something that I'm not completely buying, but here we are.
You may become one.
No, that is not the intention. That's not the intention. I'm good.
So you see, it is good to actually, in fact, Yogananda always encouraged his disciples. He said, ask questions, test your guru, and be very be a critic and see. But at the same time, he said, there's just like you go and shop on the counter. Let's say you go and want to buy a shirt. You go on multiple counters, see what is the best value for your money. But then once your heart gets satisfied, you pick one and you come back. So similarly, it is about, any idea. Let us say you're contesting it and you want to, ask questions. And that requires actually a right combination of head and heart.
Right.
What is missing in modern science is that we have made it entirely intellectual, and it is missing the component of feeling in it. Whereas in yoga, we say that the correct answers, will always come when they come together, when there is a right balance between reason and feeling.
Oh, that could be also the right and left hemisphere, right? That's
Exactly.
the theme of the podcast.
Exactly.
Callosm is a bundle that
Yeah.
connects the right and left hemisphere.
Yes, very true.
Very good. I'm liking that you are being the right hemisphere here, and I'm being the left hemisphere. I'm being more logical and mathematical.
That is why we are sitting together.
Yeah, perfect. This is Callosm. This line over here in between. That's Callosm. Yeah.
So you see, that is how things work. And in fact, if you see the intuitive faculties or the sixth sense, when we say we should meditate, and what is happening there when we were talking of the prefrontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex, it is that a lot of interconnections are going to happen between our left and right brains. And because of that interconnectedness, the balance will be there in our head and heart. And whenever you are taking a decision, because how the logic works, logic will give points in favor and points against. And if you are entirely logical in your approach, at the end of the day, it will give you 10 things in support and 10 things against, and you will be confused. And you are not doing anything.
It's like what movie to watch on Friday on Netflix, that kind of a thing. And we end up watching nothing, we just sleep off. There's too many movies in every genre.
And this is how actually the modern AI might work. But the real thing which separates a human being from a machine or from a robotic thinking is that we have a feeling component which no machine can ever have. Because no machine can have consciousness. So consciousness and feeling are the two things and once you, let us say, now this is a method which I learned from my guru, and he taught this thing, that okay, whenever you're taking decision, just keep all the options open, think about it, and then offer it to the higher reality or the higher wisdom, the universal wisdom which guides everything, and then try to feel in your heart. And before you feel in your heart, you need to be calm, because so that means you are not biased towards anything, so that you don't get carried away. But if you are completely calm and try to feel, and if there is no restlessness in whatever option that is coming to you from that higher source, then that is the right thing for you. But if you find some kind of unease in your heart, and you feel, okay, this is somehow making me restless, then because we have come from joy, we have also come from peace, and peace is our true nature. So anything which enhances your peace quotient, your calmness, your joy, is actually the right thing to do. And anything otherwise may not be. So this is how I think we should be doing our research work, because problem with modern research is it is completely, in order to make it objective, we have to intellectualize it, and entirely, we have kept out the feeling component from it.
Although I think qualitative research does depend a lot on feeling and behavior, but that's something that I really struggle with. In fact, I'm working on it. What I've realized is one of the best things that you can be imbibing in qualitative research is being a good listener, using the right probes. Hopefully being a podcaster is kind of developing that persona inside of me to ask more questions instead of doing all the talking. And hopefully I'm doing a good job so far, although I have interrupted you a couple of times. But so the future is interdisciplinary, the future is quantitative as well as qualitative research combined together. Absolutely. So you've been talking about your teacher a lot. So could you tell me about his book, The Autobiography of a Yogi?
What if I have to just put it simply? I mean, this book can be really transforming. I wish, it reminds me of Steve Jobs. If you see, Steve Jobs was a great, engineer and an entrepreneur. And he started the Apple industry. We know about it. And when he actually, he passed away, in his cremation, everybody got a kind of a black box and at his cremation. And but the label on it was that it has to be opened only when the whole ceremony is over and you go back home. Now people were thinking that there is an Apple phone in it, but actually what they found when they opened it was the book Autobiography of a Yogi.
Wow, I did not know
And
this. This
he
is
said,
incredible.
and Steve Jobs actually, and you can find it on the YouTube, he said that this is the only book which I had on my iPad. And he said,
Wow.
I want everybody to read this book. In fact, Virat Kohli also has read this
Oh, you
book.
mean my doppelganger? The guy who looks like me? No, sorry.
Yeah, he does look like you. Now I'm thinking
Yes,
about
yes,
it.
that's what I'm doing. I just
The
subtly
only
introduce it everywhere.
the
Yeah.
only thing missing is the blue T-shirt.
The blue T-shirt. I think I'm also of the same age.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, but
You can get his role of a duplicate.
hopefully, yeah. Or he could play me.
Or
in a
he could
movie.
play you.
When I become big and there's a movie on me. Anything works.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
So
go
you
on.
see, this guy, when I mean, that is this is about the book. All I can say is that it's a really transforming book. And when I read it in 2005, before that I was looking for answers. Just like I was a young
You
medical.
were in my stage. You were in
I
my
was
stage.
almost at the
I'm
same
sure
age.
you look at me and say that, oh, I know this guy.
Yes.
I know this version.
Yeah.
I've gone through this phase.
Right,
Yeah, I
right.
know that.
And everything was, and I was not able to get satisfactory answers from
Right.
anywhere.
Right,
And one fine day, I'm reading an article in Times of India, and it was an excerpt from the book. But I found it so magnetic that the very same day I was in Chandigarh at that time, and I went to the bookstore and I asked for the book. This book was available. And looking at the cover page, I mean, those eyes I cannot forget because they are so beautiful. I had never seen such a beautiful face in my life.
Wow.
And such beautiful eyes.
Wow, so good.
And when I read it, I got all my answers. I knew
Wow.
this is it, and I wanted to follow it. And what all, if you see in that book, you see it's like it is termed as an autobiography, but he hasn't written anything about himself. All he has put himself in all his humility is like a seeker who is going to different saints and
Right,
sages,
right,
and
right.
how
Beautiful.
how things are coming to him. And he does talk about a beautiful science there called Kriya Yoga. In Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna is talking about this science.
Okay.
And he says that is the airplane route to God.
Oh,
Whereas-
the rocket launcher.
Yeah, and this is the time when we want, quick fixes and
Is
quick
there a
things.
subscription core with which I can go there faster?
But this book is freely available on these days. I mean,
Yeah, I'll tag it in the YouTube description. And
Yes.
for those who are listening on podcast streaming apps, just go on YouTube and check the description, and you'll find all of these things. And of course, I have a monthly newsletter where the plan was to put a lot of science papers, but I'll definitely put links to all of these books as well for those who are interested. Yeah. The monthly newsletter, by the way, is called TMI. That stands for too much information because we can't discuss everything over here. But if you want to get into the depths of all of this, you can definitely check out the newsletter. It comes out once in a month, and the first copy will be out at the end of season 1 with all the information of all these episodes of season 1. Sorry, go on.
yeah. So, I mean, in nutshell, this is not an ordinary book, I would say.
Okay.
And more than 10 million copies have already been sold.
Wow.
It is one of the largest autobiographies which have been ever sold at any point of time. And here he is. And another beautiful aspect about his teachings is that he has made spirituality practical.
That's great.
Which
That's
which
great.
when
all
you
use that.
think about spirituality, people think, oh, I cannot do it. I mean, maybe meditation is not for me.
Right.
Maybe I'm not made for doing yoga or breath practices. But it's not like that. It is basically like, if we are made if we are in a human body, we all have our livers, we all have our kidneys, and we
Right.
all have our hearts because we are made in the same kind of frame. So similarly, it's weird to think that I cannot meditate or I cannot, because we have been programmed like that. If you see simple anatomy, if you talk of the nose. Now, in the roof of the nose, you are from anatomy background. We have this sieve-like bone called
Yeah.
cribriform
Yes,
plate of
part
ethmoid.
yeah. Cribriform plate.
And this is actually when we are breathing in and out. If you see one of the breath practices that he recommended, Yogananda, is known as a Hong Saw technique. And it's a beautiful technique, very simple. You just observe your breath in the nostrils, and there is a mantra you chant mentally only along with the breath, and try to feel the breath high up in the nose. And when you feel the breath high up in the nose, if you see, this part is also close to the prefrontal lobes, which we were talking about.
Oh yes, right. Like the prefrontal cortex is right above the cribriform plate, technically.
Yes.
At least the medial orbital part of the prefrontal cortex,
Exactly.
which is actually the commonly agreed upon area for emotion.
Absolutely. And this,
Beautiful.
when you feel and bring your attention here, naturally your prefrontal lobes start getting activated. And that is why, if you see in spirituality, we say that, okay, this is the Agya Chakra. You have to keep your attention here. Or this is also known as the 10th door.
Wow.
And in Bhagavad Gita, we call it Nasika Agram.
Nasika Agram.
Which actually, people think that Nasika Agram is the tip of the nose, but actually his guru, Yukteswarji, Swami Shri Yukteswar, he said Agram also means not only the front, but also the origin.
The origin,
so,
wow.
Yeah, so it was some misinterpretation over there by the Pandits
Wow.
who thought that tip of the nose is the area from where we have to fix our attention, but you will be crossing your eyes if you're putting your mind here.
Right.
Whereas the origin of the nose is this point, which again is coming back to the point between the eyebrows and the roof of the nose and the
Wow.
prefrontal lobe. So everything is coming back to the same point.
That's beautiful. That's like very mind-opening. So for my medical students, that's the point nasion that you study when you're studying the anatomy of the skull. And for the non-medical audience, I'm sure you've had COVID at least once. So if you know, the nasal swab kind of goes inside your nose. So instead of going inside the nose and behind, if it was shoved right up, then, and I'm sorry for inciting those painful memories and triggers, but that point is basically going to be the cribriform plate. That's where all your olfactory rootlets, that is the nerves that are responsible for smelling. It's a single nerve with little rootlets popping out from there. So the rootlets are basically under the cribriform plate, which is the bony area. And all of these rootlets go up and join to form the olfactory bulb, which is a part of the olfactory nerve, which is basically the part of the cortex that is responsible for smelling. It's called the olfactory cortex. And the area around that is usually associated with emotions. And a lot of people will be like, no, that's not the case. But we need to understand that if we were to trace back in evolution, this was known as the rhinencephalon in mice, for example, because in mice, it is so easy to make them feel something by giving them a certain smell. So in rodents, for example, a lot of emotions and feelings are largely derived from stimuli of smell. This is from the first lecture of Dr. Robert Sapolsky's YouTube series. I mean, it's not his own series. He was just giving lectures in Stanford, and somebody had the good idea of recording them. So if you just type Robert Sapolsky and type limbic system, I think it's the second or third lecture, I'm not very sure. Or it could be the first one, I might be wrong, but I'll definitely post a link later in description. And he beautifully breaks down how the rhinencephalon, or the smelling cortex in rodents, is also the emotional cortex, and how the prefrontal cortex kind of came up and overlying it in case of human beings. But we still have the olfactory cortex at the undersurface of the prefrontal cortex, and the surrounding areas are known as the OM, orbital medial PFC, prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how these things are actually like, these two disciplines are intersecting in this beautiful manner. And I just wish more conversations took place with this kind of open-mindedness and belief that ours is not the only right way. There are so many different ways of looking at the same truth. So I'm so grateful for you to kind of bring out this element of, again, traditional medicine in this way.
Yeah, because this also reminds me, as you're putting it now, that how the trend and the need is towards integrated medicine and holistic sciences. Because I was reading this book called Green Medicine some time back by this lady called Larry, or maybe he's a gentleman, I am forgetting. But in this book, they talk that if you see the ages, from the ages we have evolved, in the earlier ages, the function of the priest and the function of the physician was given to the same man. And that means because if you see the triune nature, when we have a body, a mind and a soul, they are actually a unit.
Right.
So it has to be dealt by the same man. So the priest and the physician were the same man. But when we started descending down the ages from the higher ages, the physician was given the job only of the body and mind, whereas the priest only took the job of the soul, which is as if we have, broken it down.
Right.
Now the time has come again, as you rightly mentioned,
Yeah,
to
the
unite
future.
it.
Yeah, the future is interdisciplinary, but so was the past. How
Yes.
about that?
Yeah.
And the Middle Ages
So
are
it-
like the lost ages. or
Yeah,
whatever.
so it's a kind
Damn.
of relearning happening.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And this is exactly why, if you see now, it was today's news. I heard that Dr. Gangadhar will be now taking over as the chairperson of National Medical Council.
Wow.
And I heard him when I was in the previous medical college, where he took a lecture on how since he is a psychiatrist, he worked a large part of his work was on mental disorders, and how yoga and breath practices and even meditation practices can help these individuals, those who are battling with mental disorders. And so one of the studies he was quoting in that lecture was that how this actually helped people, those who were battling with schizophrenia. Now we have so limited armamentarium when we have
Yeah.
mental disorders
There
like
are so
these.
many things that modern medicine cannot explain.
Yes,
That
yes.
need to be approached at a quantum level,
Absolutely.
at a quantum biology level.
Right.
And that is the future. People
Yeah.
need to be looking at electrons
Yes.
and protons and stuff that I don't know anything about, but would really like to know more about, because like there's so much about mitochondrial medicine as well right now. People do not talk about just medicine anymore. They're speaking about how mitochondria needs to be studied, because most of the genome, mitochondria has their own genome, although I wouldn't really want to comment anything at this point of time. But in a future episode, I'll definitely want to get somebody who can speak about mitochondrial medicine.
Yeah,
right?
no, you are right, because mitochondrial genetic material is the only material which comes directly from the mother.
Exactly.
And that is why this inheritance carries a special, reference, because a lot of other genetic material gets exchanged between the
Right.
father and the mother.
Right.
But it is directly coming from the mother. So many components, maybe like let us say intelligence, or maybe so many other things which
Right.
which I right now I may not be able to comment on, but they actually come directly from the mitochondrial inheritance. And similarly, if you see
Beautiful.
the kind of things which are happening and the direction in which we are heading. Now his work, as I was talking about, Dr. Gangadhar, who was working on, let us say, yoga and breath practices and meditation, how is it helping people, those who are having schizophrenia? So let us say, if these things get combined, now if let us say we talk of, because allopathy is a beautiful science.
Right.
I have a degree in allopathy, and
Exactly,
I know
yeah.
that this is, when
Yeah.
it comes to emergency medicine,
Right.
it is a beautiful science. When it comes to trauma, when it comes to surgery, there
Right.
is no better science than allopathy. But when it comes to chronic ailments, when it comes to, let us say, autoimmune disorders, when it comes to disorders like the mental disorders,
Right.
there I think the time has come that we should not be too egoistic about our own science.
Right,
We
right.
should be, broad-minded enough to involve other streams of
Yeah,
sciences
alternative
also,
trains of thought,
alternative.
yeah.
And this way it will complement one another. What is
Right.
the limitation of one will actually be taken care of by
the
other.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
They kind of
So-
make up for the things that they lack.
Right.
One's weakness can be accounted for by another's strength.
Yeah.
This is amazing. You were speaking about meditation and breathing. Once again, I keep on citing Andrew Huberman. He's been an important reason why I started a podcast. I was very happy with the way he was making science available for the masses. And he speaks about the physiological sigh. And I was so happy that the last time I saw him speak about it was actually on the Jimmy Fallon show, where he actually demonstrated that. And I'll drop a link below. But for those who would like to know about it right now, all you have to do is you have to take a really deep breath. And there's still a little bit of tidal volume in the lungs you can still squeeze a little more air. So the second breath is slightly smaller, but it completely fills you up. So it looks something like this for those who are watching on YouTube. It goes like, and then you kind of exhale this sigh, like a sigh of relief, with the sonic element of just like shh. And apparently the way it works on the diaphragm, the way it kind of works on the afferent or the incoming information from the viscera to the brain, and then the efferent or the outgoing information from the brain back to the viscera, the way that loop is reorganized can actually help in increasing vagal stimulation. Vagal stimulation meaning the nerve that supplies the heart and most of the viscera is called the vagus nerve, and apparently this itself can help in kind of pressing that F5 button, kind of resetting the entire heart rate scene, because the vagus controls the heart. and the vagus comes out from the brain. And the best way to stimulate the vagus is by breathing, because the nerve that is carrying all the sensory information of lung stretch eventually goes and talks back to the vagus. So this is incredible.
And on the similar lines, if you see, Yogananda gave a system of exercises, and he coined the term called energization exercises for them.
Okay.
He invented them 100 years back.
Wow.
And he was so emphatic about these exercises. He said, you don't know what I'm giving you. And if you do them every day, you will be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy. And even if you have a disease in any of these systems, that will be taken care of. And one of the breath practices which you showed is actually double breathing, which is like this. So one short and long, and then exhale also like.
Okay, one shot on one long.
So it is like double breathing in and double breathing out.
Wow.
So if you do it at any point of the day, because there is a reserve lung capacity which remains unutilized in our lungs, and that is why this kind of double mechanism he found out, which will not only give you complete oxygenation, it will give you vitality, because our vitality and energy is directly proportional to the amount of oxygen which we are taking in, and we call it prana. And that is how your cells, now we have about 25 to 50 trillion cells in our body, and each cell is like a living machinery, which is metabolizing food, which is taking in oxygen, which is excreting the waste. And so think about it, that all your 25 or 50 trillion cells in your body, when they are completely charged, it's like, you're working at your 100% battery efficiency. Amazing. Whether it is your brain, whether it is your stomach, whether it is your heart, it's like you're working. If you have a 100 horsepower engine, mostly we are working on 2 or 3 horsepower, but and large part goes unutilized. And that is why these yogic wisdom, if you tap it nicely, you can increase your efficiency to a sky level.
That's amazing. There was another video I saw on TED Talks which talks about the rhythmicity of breathing being an important variable to kind of control heart rate. And in that video, I think it was I'm not sure if it was Andy again, because there's a lot of Andrew being discussed on this podcast. We already have 2 neuroscientists with the name Andrew, but he is a professional coach for high stress performers who are into golf, etc. And he demonstrates by picking up somebody from the crowd. He just kind of has plugged something into his, I think he's plugged something to his fingers or something that is basically measuring the heart rate as well as the breathing or the respiratory rate. And he just tells the person who he picked up from the crowd, the guy who's plugged in, he just tells him he first asks a critical, confusing question. I think it's like, I'm going to give you a number and I'll keep subtracting 3 from it, and you give me the answer. 100 minus 3, 97, minus 3, 94, whatever, etc. And that guy completely starts getting confused. And then he says, now start breathing rhythmically. And then you can see the rhythmic breathing on the graph on screen. And then he kind of asks the same questions, and this guy seems to be much more composed. So this is something that I would really advise. I keep on advising this to my students before their exam, before they have to face the examiner. Or artists before they are going to perform at a gig, because the fingers sometimes don't move as fast as you want to in the beginning. There's that little bit of stiffness. So any performance, this could really help in enhancing performance. So that's another important point. I also wanted to ask about meditation. Like, is it okay if I try to have a more exploratory, adventurous definition of meditation? For example, for me, my guitar teacher, who by the way indulges in heavy meditational practices himself, had given me an exercise which is to just plot a certain note on all the different strings on the guitar fretboard and do it with a timer. So then you have to really focus on the click, and it involves the same phenomena. It's repetition. At the same time, it's banal. Of course, there is a little bit of thought to it. Apparently in meditation you have to do something that does not require a lot of thought. It has to be very simple. But in this case I have to use a lot of cognitive energy to do it. But as I stay there trying to focus on getting the right notes, following the click or the tick tuk 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 tick tuk, the metronome, I indulged in this every morning, and I had a very simple mechanism to make it an associative habit. I usually drink coffee in the morning, so what I would do is I would do a pour over, and it takes a while for the coffee that you've poured over to, the drip to reach its full cup capacity. That would take about 5 to 7 minutes. So in those 5 to 7 minutes, while the coffee is dripping in the cup, I would do these exercises. And would this be another way of meditational practice? Because a lot of musicians who might be listening to this right now are probably not into meditation, but they definitely want to consider upping their practicing skills so they become better instrumentalists or vocal warm-up skills, etc., etc. All these exercises. Since you kind of focus in on a very specific activity and it's repetitive, would it kind of somehow be similar to meditation?
Well, I will answer it in this way because there is a lot of analogy between meditation and sleep.
Right.
If I have to just put it in one sentence or in one word, what is meditation? I would term it as a conscious sleep. And I
Wow.
was asking today only my undergraduate students that we all have read physiology, and what is the physiological basis? Now we all know that even if we are dead tired and we go to sleep, we feel fresh in the morning and we are
Right.
absolutely, there is no tiredness,
Right.
provided we have got a sound sleep and you feel rejuvenated.
Right.
But how does that happen
Right.
in physiology?
I really don't understand a lot about sleep. In fact, we're going
Huh.
to have somebody on an episode only on sleep.
Yeah. So
But I'd love to know.
yeah, if you
from
see, even the modern day physiology has no answer for that, but the yoga has an answer for that. If you see, the way we are created, if you since we have an energy body in which we exist. We have actually three bodies: the causal body, the energy body, and the physical body. This is
Right.
how the yogis put it.
Right.
And when we die, we actually leave our physical body and go back into the astral body or the energy body in which we were before coming and taking a birth
This is
as
very
a physical
beautiful.
body.
This reminds me of a line that my Masi told me,
Huh.
who was an alternate healer. She said, we always claim that we are human beings having spiritual experiences, but in reality, we are spiritual beings having human experiences.
Human experiences.
That's where it comes from. Probably. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
So what is happening if you see when the child starts making its body in the mother's womb, from the single cell zygote, what is the first structure that starts forming in the embryology? It's actually the neuroectodermal plate.
Right.
And slowly the mesoderm and other things will happen.
Right, right.
And yogis tell us, and in fact it was Yogananda who actually told us that this part which is initially formed, the neuroectodermal plate, when it goes cranially it will form the brain,
Right.
and caudally it will form the spinal cord.
Right.
So the first energy which actually comes is in the medulla, which is considered
Wow.
as the mouth of God, from where the energy body actually comes in.
Wow.
And slowly on that blueprint, all the structures they start forming, and the heart will form in its own time. The
So
limbs will
beautiful.
form.
It's like embryology combined
Embryology
with
coming
yoga.
together.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank
And
you so much.
if
for
you
this.
see, energy right from the day we start having our body in our mother's womb is actually traveling centrifugally,
Right.
coming into the medulla, and from medulla it is going into the brain and spinal cord, and then it is flowing into the organs and vital structures, because energy has to keep running our heart, it has to
Right.
keep running our digestive system, it has to keep going into the eyes, and all the functions will depend on the energy. Just like, in this house there are so many appliances running, but they are all running on electricity.
Right.
So now what happens in sleep is actually that this whole day this energy was going out and working, but when we sleep this energy is withdrawn and it goes back into its source, into the cord and into the medulla. And
Wow.
your muscles are completely rested. Even our heartbeat slows down, because a part of the energy, it cannot be completely withdrawn.
Right, right.
But you know that during sleep, if you see in the ICU on the monitor, when the patients sleep
Yeah.
during that time, even the breath rate goes down.
Right.
Even there is a marginal drop in heart rate. This is because sleep is a parasympathetic drive. The sympathetic
right.
drive goes away.
Right. Right.
Now, this is exactly what is going to happen during meditation, but at a higher amplitude. Because
Wow.
that is why, since this process was happening subconsciously during sleep, it doesn't get registered in the mind, and plus it doesn't can go beyond a certain level. But when you meditate, you again do the same thing. You withdraw the energy from the whole body slowly and slowly as you focus the attention here, and you will see that you go into that sleep mode, but you're conscious, you're
Wow.
aware, and that is why your whole body gets rest, and your heart also gets rest. And with practice, even yogis can go into breathless samadhi or breathless state, which is actually completely calming your bodily organs, and they can actually stop their heart also for some time.
Wow.
Now, that kind of rest, imagine, which is million times powerful than what a routine sleep can give us, cannot come to us without meditation. So, in a way, what you're saying that when you're playing this guitar and you're focusing your mind on the strings, it's like saying that, can I sleep while running?
No.
You
Got
cannot.
it.
You cannot.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's like you because you are still dissipating your energy into something.
Right.
You
right.
need to withdraw the energy and
Right.
remain there, and then channel that energy and reverse the flow. It was centrifugal.
Now it's got to be
Now it has to be centripetal, and the
Beautiful.
more and more it becomes centripetal and comes back to its source, you will see that human body and human machinery has been given to us for higher perceptions,
Right.
which otherwise will not come to us. It all depends on how we channel this energy and how we focus it, how we avoid it from getting distracted,
Right.
and how we bring it to a point from where those higher perceptions can emerge. So this is the whole science of meditation in a nutshell.
Wow.
So-
Is there any place or any book that you would suggest with which people can educate themselves more about the practice of medicine and how to do it right?
Practice of meditation, you mean?
Meditation, sorry.
Practice,
I said
yeah.
medicine by mistake.
Yes,
sorry.
yes. So, I would recommend, in fact, Yogananda's, there is his disciple, Swami Kriyananda, actually, he has written one book called Meditation for Starters.
Okay,
And
that's
it's
good.
a very
I'll
beautiful
link
book,
it.
very
I'll link
small,
it.
Meditation for Starters. And Lessons in Meditation is another book by Jyotish Novak.
Okay.
And the other one, which I said, is by Swami Kriyananda, Meditation for Starters.
Definitely, we'll
And,
definitely check it
yeah.
out.
So, and even there is a book called Awakening in Super Consciousness.
Wow.
It is a beautiful
Nice
book.
title, yeah.
It's a beautiful book, again written by his disciple Swami Kriyananda.
Amazing. This has been an incredibly mind-blowing conversation, very mind-opening conversation. Dr. Amit, it has been such a pleasure
Thank you.
to listen to you talk about all of these things, and I'm just going to put down a couple of other details. If people want to reach out to you for your clinical services or for your spiritual services, or are you on social media?
No, I'm just having my email ID, but I do have a WhatsApp, so
Okay,
that's
cool.
the only social
Cool.
media
I'll
I'm
definitely
having.
link the things, necessary things
Yeah.
below. Thank you so much once again for this beautiful time.
Thank you. Thank you. It
All
was
right,
a pleasure. It
Same
was-
here, likewise.
yeah.
Yeah. If you like what you hear, please support the Callosm team by liking, sharing, following, and/or subscribing to Callosm. That's CALLOSM on Instagram and YouTube. You can also check out all episodes on sunitzadav.com/Callosm. That's SUNITZADAV.com/CALLOSM. Thank you so much for your time and happy listening.